Very good afternoon and welcome once again to a weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Vigili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Health Officer Dr. Keisha Davis, Dr. James Bridgers, who is the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Program Administrator, Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Response, also from HHS, Dr. Christopher Rogers, who is the Acting Chief of Public Health Services. And a special guest today also is the Director of the Department of Transportation, Chris Conkling. Thank you everybody for joining us, members of the media. This meeting is being recorded, and remember to raise your hand during the Q&A portion of this presentation. With that, good afternoon to you, Mr. County Executive. Great to see you.
Good to be here. Thanks everybody for joining us again today, and I hope everybody had a good holiday yesterday. I attended events throughout the county, from the Homer Park Parade to community gatherings, and culminating in the beautiful fireworks display last night in Germantown. They had a full house up there. Over 30,000 people they think attended, which is pretty remarkable, and it was great to see it. It was nice to see neighbors and colleagues and other residents enjoying the festivities, and the 4th is a holiday. And we look back on our nation's founding, and certainly the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution represented real progress, and were among the first steps to create nations that weren't governed by kings and queens, but rather by the people. But it was the beginning, not the end, of the creation of the nation we are today. The founders created a country that allowed slavery, limited voting rights to white men who owned property, and office holding to those who owned more property. The lower houses of most legislators were elected by this limited electorate, and the lower houses elected the upper houses, like the state Senate in most legislatures. Voters did not directly elect their own US senators until 1913. Before that, they were elected by the state legislatures. So you get this kind of repetitive theme of the wealthier and property owning groups of people having more political control over the system, and certainly for over the first 100 years of American history. Women had no political rights until 1920, and our Black population had limited rights while being subjected to unending segregation for over 100 years after the end of the Civil War. All of these changes to a more democratic structure were products of the work and struggle of the American people. We didn't have these rights when this nation was born. These are things that people fought for and gained over a long period of our history. So while we celebrate the 4th, it's fitting to remember how we've evolved to expand the rights of our citizens, as well as to expand those rights to more people. And it's time that, now we're in a period of time, this work is still not done. In wake of last week's Supreme Court ruling, there were setbacks to progress and equity. It was great to be out yesterday around the county with our diverse population, inclusive communities and residents, reflect of what this nation is meant to be. I want to send my thanks and appreciation to all the county employees, municipalities, and community leaders who helped organize these activities to ensure that every event was safe and fun for everyone. Today, we have two significant issues we want to discuss. One is improving transportation mobility while reducing carbon emissions, and the enactment of Maryland's Birth Equity Act. On the MCDOT update, Monday, the Earth recorded its hottest day ever on record. And throughout the past month, we've had to deal with extremely poor air quality due to wildfires in Canada, something that, in my lifetime has not been a normal part of a summer. Even though these stories are noted on both national and local news, what's often missing is reporting is the fact that these incidents are a direct result of climate change. And if we don't start making real and significant progress to improve sustainability and slow down the rate of temperatures rising, we're going to be experiencing increased frequency and intensity of severe and destructive weather events, wildfires, and more poor air quality days. We've already, seen an alert that with the onset of El Nino, we should expect a hotter than normal summer, just what we need right now. Over the past 2 years, I launched one of the most aggressive climate action plans anywhere in this country, with the goal of 80% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2027 and 100% reduction by 2035. These are ambitious goals, There's no other way to describe them, but we are making progress. Earlier this year, during an event recognizing our largest rooftop solar project on an apartment complex, Governor Moore talked about our climate change efforts and said the following: "This is a time where we see Montgomery County is going to lead. There are certain places that are right now debating what progress looks like. They are in the process of figuring it out. Well, how do we get there?" And then there's Montgomery County saying, "We'll see you at the finish line." But even with the changes that we're implementing locally as well as statewide, it's only a drop in the bucket compared to the changes that are needed at both national and international levels. And this chart here kind of shows what our path to 100% reduction looks like. And you can see the different components of what comprises our contributions to greenhouse gases. The chart on the screen shows the various sectors. Today, I want to draw your attention to the orange areas of this graph, which are the ones that show the needs we need. Sorry about that. Account for the reductions we need to make in our transportation sector in order for us to meet our goals. And this is really important. The transportation sector is controlled both by the county government, but also by everybody who's listening to this. If we're going to achieve our goals to reduce greenhouse gases, there are two major mobility trends that need to be addressed. First is a concerted effort to continue making the transition to electric vehicles, both for personal use as well as commercial use. Even among our own fleet of county and government vehicles and transportation, we are moving forward to electrify as fast as we can. And this also includes the use of hydrogen for vehicles that have longer ranges or that operate under heavier loads. As this transition occurs, we also must continue to get cars off the road by creating a more robust public transportation infrastructure. I don't expect everybody to switch over to public transportation today, because today Montgomery County's infrastructure network is not as broad or as efficient as it needs to be, but this is where we're continuing to make progress. And we need to encourage and incentivize the use of mass transit, as well as encourage the continuation of telework policies that help reduce traffic flows. While we've seen traffic on our roadways return to pre-pandemic levels, the good news, we've also seen a return of riders to our ride-on service, as well as Metro Bus and Metro Rail. And the good news is that many companies, including this government and the federal government, have continued telework policies that are not only popular with employees, but also helpful to our efforts to reduce carbon emissions. But along the lines of reducing carbon emissions, this obviously can't be done by the government alone. If we were to electrify every car the government owns, and if we were to electrify every piece of transportation equipment or heavy equipment, it still wouldn't get us to achieving the emissions targets or eliminating the emissions that come from vehicles. This depends on, people like you and me to make a decision to go electric with new vehicles. And I think the good news on that is you're going to continue to see the price of electric vehicles come down. Some producers now are talking about electric vehicles that'll be below $25,000. This begins to move closer to a range of general affordability. And when you consider the savings on fuel costs, it's a further boost to making these vehicles affordable. So, I've made this switch myself. I encourage other people to look at what's out there in the market, and as best you can, start making the switch over now. We're going to be doing what we can to make sure there are more chargers in our garages and along our transportation infrastructure, so that getting your car charged is not going to be a toll or a burden on finding a place where you can actually do this. There are still challenges ahead, and today MCDOT Director Chris Conklin is joining us to give you updates on some new programs, technology, routes, and options that we're making in order to make commuting and traveling via mass transit easier, safer, and more sustainable. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris now, and then we'll take any questions you have on this.
Thank you, County Executive. I wanted to echo some of the comments that were made about transit ridership. Our transit ridership is at about 55,000 people per day using the ride-on system, which is around 80% of our 2019 levels, and we continue to see increases in our transit ridership with each month. Right now, we're at 55,000. We continue to see that grow. Our highest ridership in the last year was within the last month. In order to accommodate a return of ridership and also to have our transit system better match the needs of the future, we've embarked on a Reimagine Ride-On study, which has been underway for about a year. At this point, we have completed many of the existing conditions analysis and have developed preliminary recommendations. We're going to be having pop-up meetings at transit centers throughout the county and virtual public meetings this fall to share information on that. If you want more information about Ride-On Reimagine, you can find on our website or by following the QR code in front of you now. Some of the elements of this Ride-On Reimagine are defining different types of service: bus rapid transit, which we are working aggressively to implement; high capacity transit like the Ride-On Extra service; express routes that operate on our ways like Route 100 from Germantown; and then a new set of services, commuter routes, that I'm going to share a little bit more information on. And then things that you've seen are traditional coverage routes and the micro transit system, the Ride-On Flex. This is an example of the type of work that's going into this study. You see more flex zones in that hatched area on this graphic, and these commuter routes that will enable you to book a trip from an area like Poolsville and make your way to a transit system within that network. Another project that we're working on is the Great Seneca Transit Network, a new Ride-On Extra service that will be going to construction this summer. You can find more information about this also on our network by searching for Great Seneca Transit Network or following the QR code. What this system will do is link the Shady Grove Metro system to the universities at Shady Grove on two routes initially, one that uses I-370 and accesses the Rio and Crown Farm development areas in Gaithersburg, connecting through a series of stops to the University of Shady Grove, and then a second pattern that uses Shady Grove Road to also link to USG, serving the medical, hospital, and other research facilities that are developing on those corridors. Each of these will be paired with a series of transit-only lanes on existing roads, largely within the life sciences area, and transit signal priority to help those bus services reach those destinations more frequently and more reliably. We're hoping that this transforms access in that part of the county. A similar project that will go into construction this summer are bus lanes on University Boulevard that will serve a combination of WMATA and Ride-On routes. Those will be between Amherst Avenue near Wheaton and Dennis Avenue near the Four Corners area. We'll be evaluating the performance of that system, looking at travel speeds, crash data, on-time performance, and also how the public feels this is working. And again, it'll go into construction later this summer, and will take a couple weeks for us to implement on that corridor. You can find more information on our website about this also. If you search University bus lanes at MCDOT, you will find it and can provide us input or learn more about the implementation that's underway. A couple shorter term options that have gone into effect this week: courtesy stop program both on Metro Bus and Ride-On. Except for express services like the Flash or those operating on highways, you can request a specific stop by letting the bus operator know where you want to get off when you board the bus. And again, it's exclusively for drop-offs. You can open the front door when exiting to make sure the driver knows where you want to stop. The operator has discretion to make sure that that location is safe, and it has to be on the normal route. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight the new Ride-On Trip Planner that was released a couple weeks ago. This is a new service that's powered by Move It. We were able to implement this through a Federal Transit Innovation Grant. With this system, you can choose your current location and your destination, pick the route that best works for you. It also includes capital bike share and scooter operations. We'll give you real-time arrival and travel time information, step-by-step directions on how to access the bus stop. We'll let you know when it's time to leave for the bus stop, and we'll let you know how crowded those buses are. So you can pick a route that meets your comfort level with the number of people that are going to be on the bus. Happy to share all this information with you today. And if you subscribe to @MCDOT Now on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can get more information about all of our programs. And I'll be here to answer any questions you may have about these initiatives starting now.
Thank you, Director Conklin. Members of the media, this is the time we're going to ask questions regarding transit from Director Conklin and or the county executive. Please raise your hand right here on Zoom and we'll get started. Any questions on transit? Going once, going twice. No questions on transit? Thank you, Director Conklin, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Mr. County Executive, all the topics on public health.
Sure. So other topics, talk a little bit about rent stabilization. Over the last few weeks, we've talked about rent stabilization bill that's currently in council. As I mentioned last week, I support the compromise bill that was voted out of committee that holds rent increases to inflation plus 3%, capped at 6%. Although I would have preferred that the bill hold increases to inflation only, this compromise is much better than one of the alternative bills that would have allowed increases of inflation plus 8% with no cap. Just to be clear, that would have meant during those months when inflation was running at 6% or 7%, rents could have gone up 14 or 15% with no justification at all. That is the problem with allowing increases of inflation plus 8% over a cap. It has nothing to do with increases that reflect the increased cost of a property owner to maintain or manage their property. It's just allows them to go that much above inflation just because they want to. And in a world with shrinking affordable housing supply and with rising prices, which have been the subject of much publicity, sanctifying or justifying rent increases that vastly exceed inflation is really problematic. What could have happened under the original bill could have easily encouraged landlords to raise their rents over 10%. And no one is regularly getting 10% raises in their incomes. If you look at historical data on incomes of working people in the county or in the country, they in no way come close to 10% per year increases. In fact, they don't come close even to 6% a year increases. So how anyone could afford these rent increases is beyond me. There are over 50,000 households in this county that are rent burdened, meaning they're paying 30% or more to live in an apartment. Many households are paying 50 and 60% to live in apartments. And the idea that households like that could sustain year over year increase at the magnitude that was contemplated by the other bill is just not realistic. And so I hope that the council, goes with the compromise and we continue to work on what we can do to provide more affordable housing, which we're going to need no matter what happens. We had voluntary guidelines in this county for almost 40 years that most landlords abided by. If you look back on the voluntary guidelines, there were, I think, only 2 years over the 40 where increases exceeded 6% during years of high inflation. Most of the time, the increases are between 2 and 3%, and most landlords have been able to live with that. And it did allow, and this bill allows, for landlords to get larger rent increases if their actual costs exceed the guidelines. So if you have a guideline that's, say, 3% over inflation, and if they demonstrate that their actual costs exceeded inflation plus 3%, they can get an increase that goes above that. If they're doing capital improvements, major improvements to their building, which pretty obviously aren't going to fit within their current rents, they're allowed to get increases to accommodate the major improvements. And both these processes are more technical and automatic. They're not subject to any kind of political decision. There's nobody, in the housing department that says yes or no. There's no committee that votes on whether or not to allow these increases. These are just simply allowed if a landlord demonstrates that their costs exceed the guidelines. So it's pretty straightforward. In addition, all new buildings get 15 years before rent stabilization applies, which means they can raise their rents every year, however much they want to, whatever they think the market will bear, and there is no regulation on them, which is, I think, a pretty fairly generous path. And at the end of 15 years, then their rents would fall under inflation plus 3%. I've got to say, if you haven't figured out what your operating costs are by then and haven't adjusted your rents to cover them, then you're not managing your property correctly. At that point, it shouldn't be a mystery about what you need to maintain adequate income to protect your investment. This evening, I'm going to attend the celebration with tenants of the Westchester West Apartments in Aspen Hill. This is the large apartment complex we discussed in a briefing 2 weeks ago, where the county learned that a buyer was going to purchase the 345-unit building and raise rents upward of 6%, placing a severe financial hardship in many of these families who would then be forced to move. The county utilized its right of first refusal to purchase the building and then sold it to Enterprise, an affordable housing developer, and they've agreed to keep this property affordable so these tenants are able to stay in their homes. So I'll take any questions now if anybody wants to ask specifically about rent stabilization.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Members of the media, please raise your hand if you have questions about this particular topic. Others, Heather Kurtz, WMAL. Good afternoon, Heather. You need to unmute, Heather.
Good afternoon. I'm wondering, County Executive, have you talked to other members of the entire council about the rent stabilization bill and gotten any indication of where they stand on the compromise?
I've talked to some people, haven't talked to everyone, but I think I have reason to believe they've got the 6 votes to do the compromise. I don't know if there are 7, 8, or 9. But I feel that, from what I've been told, that they have a majority at this moment to do this.
Have they told you when they may take a final vote on this?
Unfortunately, this is a decision of the council president. He has to schedule it. It ought to be scheduled. They certainly had plenty of time to talk about it. Hopefully they'll schedule it soon. I mean, every month we delay is another month of ridiculous rent increases for some people. Not everybody, but for some.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Members of the media, any other questions regarding rent stabilization? No? Okay, Mr. County Executive, you may continue now.
All right. So another topic we're going to discuss today is the Healthy Babies Initiative. Ensuring families and especially children have stable living conditions and they're not constantly uprooted and moving is vital to both physical and mental health outcomes. This is why we're working so hard to stop the displacement of families. Equally important to stable living conditions is access to quality medical care. And at the beginning of this month, Maryland medical benefits will enhance healthcare access and support across the state. The Healthy Babies Equity Act is a new law and it ensures medical coverage to pregnant women who would be eligible for Medicaid or Maryland's Children's Health Program, regardless of their immigration status. Under the Healthy Babies Initiative, applicants will be eligible for the same medical benefits package available to other pregnant individuals, including physical and behavioral health services, as well as dental and prescription drug cover with no copays. Applicants will receive 4 months of a postpartum coverage, and Maryland Medical may also assist in covering health expenses incurred during pregnancy or 4-month postpartum period in the 3 months prior to the application. Maryland is now the 17th state that allows this sort of coverage to the estimated 6,000 non-citizen pregnant women who qualify in our state. This is a common sense effort and it's long overdue. I supported the Healthy Babies Initiative in Annapolis this year, and I want to thank the governor and our county's state delegation for getting the benefit enacted this year. Substantial maternal and newborn health care has long-term consequences and drives inequities in health outcomes. The National Bureau of Economic Research noted that expanding prenatal Medicaid eligibility, undocumented immigrants may have a significant impact on health and economic outcomes for the next generation of Americans. Other things we know is that, many parents, because they can't afford healthcare, don't have access to it, defer necessary visits to doctors. We know that this state and Montgomery County have higher than typical death rates among the minority population in childbirth. And that's a problem. The idea that that's happening in Montgomery County is not something that should be happening here. And this legislation will make sure that people get access to health care. And, babies born at below, average birth weights and who struggle with nutrition and having other needs met often suffer long-term consequences, which of course we all wind up paying for, whether it's in an emergency room or whether it's in the need for special programs in our schools. The inability to act in this area really does have long-term consequences for people's health, but also for how the government here goes about doing its work. So this is an important benefit change, and our task now is to make sure we find and get our qualified applicants to apply for this benefit. And I'm going to turn this over now to Dr. Christopher Rogers, HHS's Acting Chief of Public Health Services, who's leading the implementation and outreach efforts as we support Montgomery County residents transitioning from maternity partnership program into Medicaid under the Healthy Babies Equity Act. And before I turn it over, I just want to emphasize for folks reporting to the immigrant community that applying for this program no way jeopardizes your immigration status. This is one of the programs that we're allowed to do that will not have consequences for immigrants who take advantage of this program. So if you're concerned that using this program may further impair your ability to get citizenship or even stay in the country, this will not do that. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Rogers now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. County Executive, for that introduction. As the County Executive stated, since 1989, Montgomery County has been offering the Maternity Partnership Program, which has provided prenatal care, home-based case management, and dental care to uninsured, low-income pregnant women residing in Montgomery County. In the first year of the program, we supported 866 pregnant persons, and we now serve approximately 1,700 annually. With the enactment of and the implementation of the Healthy Babies Equity Act that went into effect on July 1st, 2023, our maternity partnership program patients are now eligible to receive comprehensive services through Maryland Medicaid, which would include doctor and clinic visits, dental care, prescription drugs, behavioral health care, hospital care, lab work, ultrasounds and other tests, mental health care, transportation to medical and other needed appointments, and also breastfeeding supplies. To be eligible for the Healthy Babies Equity Act Medicaid coverage, persons must be a non-citizen woman who are currently pregnant or whose pregnancy recently ended, and up to 250% of the federal poverty level, which is approximately $4,340 or less per month for a family of two, or $6,600 for a family of four. Within DHHS, specifically Public Health Services and our Office of Eligibility Support Services, we are currently conducting aggressive outreach in order to communicate to our county residents of this new benefit services that are available to them. We currently have about 1,300 women who are still pregnant as of July 1st, 2023, and will need to enroll in Medicaid in order to continue to receive prenatal care, labor, and delivery services. We have a team of community health workers as well as community health nurses that are conducting targeted outreach to all 1,300 women by phone, by email, as well as in person, to help them to apply and enroll in the Medicaid coverage through the Healthy Babies Equity Act. Persons can also apply through the Maryland Health Connection consumer portal, either online via the app on phone or in person. In addition to that, the Department of Health and Human Services, we are conducting Healthy Babies Equity Act sign-up days to assist pregnant women who are transitioning from the Maternity Partnership Program to Maryland Medicaid. There will be translation services available to individuals so that they can receive support and assistance in their preferred language. Upcoming Healthy Babies Equity Act sign-up days include this Saturday, July the 8th, 2023, from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 1818 Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring. Saturday, July 15th, 2023, 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at 1000 to 12900 Middlebrook Road in Germantown. We also are planning future Healthy Babies Equity Act sign-up days throughout year one of implementation to assist pregnant women who are transitioning from the Maternity Partnership Program to Maryland Medicaid. We have been engaged with many community partners, both and also interagency partners, to communicate this message. As well as the county executive mentioned, we are making sure that we are pushing out trusted information on the Healthy Babies Equity Act, Medicaid, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's rule clarification that immigrants can safely receive public benefits through public health services, the Department of Health and Human Services, and Maryland Department of Health and other community partners. We are developing simple to understand plain language flyers in multiple languages that we will be disseminating to the community so that they are aware of this important benefit. Thank you, Mr. County Executive, and now I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Members of the media, any questions right now, please raise your hand regarding the Healthy Babies Equity Act. Katara Jones, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Hi, I'm good. I'm Katara with CTV News. Question for Dr. Rogers. Do you have an idea of how many more pregnant women in Montgomery County would be eligible to receive these services?
The Maryland Department of Health estimates there are about 1,860 Montgomery County women that reside here that will benefit from Maryland Medicaid as a result of the Healthy Babies Equity Act.
And briefly, can you talk about how critical these services are to pregnant women in Montgomery County?
Yes, very essential. We know based on research and based on our own internal data that maternal morbidity and mortality continues to impact and plague our minority communities, specifically African-American communities, as well as our Hispanic and Latino communities. Because this program mainly targets our Latino and Hispanic community members, we want to ensure that they are aware of this important program so that they can get the prenatal as well as the postnatal services that they need in order to improve birth outcomes for their children, as well as to ensure any maternity complications that may result of not having access to prenatal care don't take place. Also, under this important legislation, the child that is born to the pregnant person will be eligible for Maryland Children's Health Insurance Program through the age of 1. And so we also want to ensure that the children, unborn child, as well as the newborn children, have access to care for both for their child as well as the mother. Also, I will mention the impact of maternal mental health as well as behavioral health, postpartum depression. This legislation and the important point of Medicaid will help prevent such things and also help patients to manage symptoms from postpartum depression and other postpartum behavioral mental health concerns that these women may experience that we want to prevent. So we want to make sure that we as a county are doing all we can do to help individuals become aware and enroll in this important benefit program.
Any more questions, Katara?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you. Members of the media, any additional questions on the Healthy Babies Equity Act? Well, thank you, Dr. Rogers, for joining us today. Mr. County Executive, let's continue.
So I want to talk a little bit about the opening of Crossvines this weekend. Before I turn it over to Sean O'Donnell on our HHS team, I do want to note that the importance of the Crossvines opening to the public. Located in Poolesville, Crossvines is a grape crush facility intended to help grape farmers and winemakers. Though grapes and winemaking offer a high-value crop to farmers, it can take 3 to 5 years to produce a full crop of grapes after the vines are actually planted. And the equipment necessary for crushing grapes and making wine can add millions of dollars to the costs. The crush pad we built, and that's what a crush pad is, I should probably explain. It's a facility where farmers can bring their grapes in, and in the facility, the grapes get destemmed, they get crushed, they get put into vats, and ultimately into either steel tanks or barrels. And there's a winemaker, either the farmer can provide its own winemaker, or there's a winemaker at the facility that helps the farmer make wines, and each farmer gets their own distinct wine. So it's a way of encouraging an industry to start, and a way of spreading the costs of the equipment over many different potential wine growers, so that they're able to take advantage of it without each having to bear the costs themselves. So the crush pad we built is intended to be a community resource, and it's going to help the farmers who grow grapes, as well as encourage farmers to grow grapes, and then use the Crossvines facility to put these grapes into production and ultimately into a wine bottle. The brand new facility is also an event and meeting venue and an educational space for farmers and students learning about agriculture. The facility is working with Montgomery College to help to develop a new generation of winemakers. And so you'll find in Montgomery County actual courses in how to grow and make wine, and how to be successful as a vintner in the county. So this is, something new. One of the goals was to create a high value crop that would disincentivize people from wishing they had turned their farmland into houses or rooftops. And, we're trying to preserve the ag reserve, and has enormous environmental benefits. And one way to do that is to make sure farmers can use this economically and be more successful in farming in the ag reserve. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the opening ceremony for Crossvines, and it was exciting to see this realization of an effort that started 10 years ago, after I'd listened to a talk by Kevin Addix. And Kevin Addix is now the State Secretary of Agriculture, but back then he was involved heavily with Maryland's wine industry, and he was speaking at a conference on winemaking in Maryland. And what he said really interested me. He said that, Maryland didn't have a great reputation for wines, but he said it wasn't the grapes. It wasn't that Maryland couldn't build or couldn't grow world-class grapes. It was that our grape growers and our winemakers were pretty much more amateurish. They weren't big. A lot of them didn't have the skill sets or the equipment. And so our wines were produced not by people who were as well trained as they could have been. And he, along with information that I got from the University of California, was able to demonstrate that Montgomery County actually had the climate and soil conditions that could support a vibrant wine industry, and that something like a crush pad could help stimulate that industry. So I started 10 years ago trying to persuade the county executive, who agreed to do this, to set us on a path of working with our own revenue authority to build the facility for events, as well as build the crush pad. So I'm really excited to see it. And once I learned that this side of Potomac River was as good for producing the right kind of grapes, we did everything we could. I want to thank our legislators who were able to get state funds that helped us create the winery. Without their help and without the state funding, this would have been a lot slower process. I want to thank them for making the opening day possible. So this crop is going to help increase the potential income of farmers in order to help ensure the viability of agriculture in this county. And it's good, which reinforces the importance of creating the ag reserve in the first place. And the facility is going to reduce the cost of entering the winemaking business, and it's going to allow farmers to begin growing and then using cross vines to produce the wine that we want them to make. There's already a financial incentive to provide grapes for winemakers in Maryland because Maryland winemakers are required to use grapes grown in the state before they turn outside. So just growing grapes in this state helps you have a guaranteed market. So this is bigger though than just helping farmer. The greater or wider vision is a wine country in Montgomery County, something which will encourage travel and tourism in the county, much as it benefits Northern Virginia. And creating wineries and growing tourism will also contribute to increasing revenues from these industries that'll be further drivers of economic development in the county. So this is kind of a win for everything. It's good for Poolesville. It gives more people a reason to come visit Poolesville and do business in Poolesville. So we believe it'll be a boost for the local economy of Poolesville. And that should be more good news. And with that, I'll turn this over to Sean O'Donnell, Dr. Davis, and Dr. Bridgers for any updates they might have on the health front.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. So I'll just quickly go through our update on the county's COVID report. We have not seen any notable growth of new variants affecting our population. Our transmission levels from PCR testing remains very low, and our hospitalization rates remain low. And we're seeing the case rates across the entire state are low as well. This is all good news. Hospitalizations within the county have ticked up just a very small amount, but they're much lower than they have been for years. So this is great news. We're seeing those same lower hospitalization rates across the state as well. And just a reminder, the county is still offering COVID vaccinations 2 days a week at the Dennis Avenue Health Center between 9 and 3. And you can go to the govaxmoco.com to see what vaccines we're giving each of those days and to make an appointment if you'd like. There's also walk-ins. So we have the pediatric vaccine, we have the adult versions as well. So again, if you have not gotten your updated booster shot, please come out and we're happy to give it to you on those days. Now I'd like to see if my colleagues, Dr. Bridgers or Dr. Davis, have any additional points they'd like to add.
Nothing for me, Ms. O'Donnell. Dr. Davis.
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Do you have any remarks today?
I do not. We take questions.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. Members of the media, you can raise your hand right now once again and ask questions. Any other topics? There's Heather Curtis again. Good afternoon, Heather. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hello again. So I saw that the county has filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit again that Maryland Shell Issue has filed against it. Wondering if anyone, I know that it's a legal case, you probably can't comment, but wondering if anyone cares to comment and when you expect to hear back from the judge about that.
Well,
So,
As you would expect,
I don't have any comments. It is
do
illegal.
not comment on ongoing legal issues, and
Right.
I don't know that we'll know when the judge will issue a order or not. But until the judge issues an order, obviously depending on what the order is, we can't comment on ongoing legal issues.
Figured I had to do my due diligence. Thank you so much.
I don't blame you, but
You can trust we'll have answers either way once they issue a decision.
Sure.
correct.
thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the media right now? No questions? Going once? Twice? I guess we're done for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe.
Okay.
We'll see you again next time.
Thank you very much.